In this episode of Ottawa Business Journal's Behind the Headlines, 40 Under 40 announced. Bryden's energy trash company gets a first client and a new vision for a 200-year-old landmark in Eastern Ontario. All this and more coming up right now. Behind the Headlines is brought to you by Nelligan Law, Ottawa's fierce, proven, and human law firm. Visit them at nelliganlaw.ca. Hello and welcome to Behind the Headlines, recorded on May 10th, 2021. I'm Michael Kern from the Ottawa Business Journal. Behind the Headlines is a regular podcast from OBJ to explore the most popular local business stories. I'm happy to have my two colleagues from OBJ with us here today. Here is Peter Kavesi and David Sally. Welcome to you both. Peter, our first story is a big one. It's a once-a-year story. It's a recurring story. I'm building up the suspense here, and it's one of our top read stories typically of the entire year. Let our listeners and viewers know what we're talking about.
So the Ottawa Business Journal and the Ottawa Board of Trade just released the names of this year's 2021 40 Under 40 recipients. This is really exciting for Ottawa Business Journal. I think it's one of our coolest initiatives of the year, just because it's a celebration of the region's rising business stars. So every year, OBJ, the Ottawa Board of Trade, and our partners select just again some of those young leaders who are demonstrating business achievements, professional expertise, and community involvement. So again, it's a great moment for the entire business community to come together and celebrate the achievements of some people who are really just shaping the local economy. What's really cool about this project, of course, it's really long-standing awards, and Mike, you've been right at the center of it for some 20 years, both with the nominations, the awards program, gala. I'm really curious. Tell us, how has 40 Under 40 evolved over that time?
Wow, that's such a good question. I kind of, as you indicated, lost exact track of how long I've been involved. It's around 20 years. This is the 24th. Maybe I'll start off by saying that group of recipients, which means that this is pretty cool. But next year, will be the 25th. So that's quite the milestone. The 25th, of course, do the math. 40 times 25 will mean we have 1,000 alumni. So how has it changed? Certainly if I were to speak a little bit more about this year, the pandemic, no surprise, was a big theme this year. And there were a lot of stories in the nomination process of how people were dealing with the pandemic. If we zoom out a little bit, I think the award has gotten a little bit more broad-based. I mean, principally, who we're looking for, or the award is ideally, I guess, suited to a company founder, someone that's developed a significant business with a significant number of employees, significant revenue basis, also, balancing out expertise and community, by the way. I have seen it be a little bit more inclusive. And when I say inclusive, I mean kind of from a sector perspective, and also a few more public sector people being recognized. One of the things this year is we would have seen some key association people, someone from Ottawa Tourism, people from the healthcare industries, things like that. So I guess those are some of the reactions. I guess the other thing that surprised me this year is that people had time to do nominations. So we didn't see any dip in the regular level, pre-pandemic level of nominations. We had close to 300 people. I think it was 280, 290 people start nominations. I think 160 finished nominations. And then I do some pre-screening and hand it to an independent panel of judges. And then they took a look at 78 to end up with our 40 this year.
So, of course, I need to mention that everyone can read the full list of recipients at obj.ca. It's in the editor's pick box. Dave, let's bring you into the conversation. Both you and I have served stints as judges, over the years, so we have a bit of perspective. When you look at this year's list of recipients, what sort of story is it telling you about Ottawa's economy and the direction that the city is heading in?
Well, Peter, I mean, what's the old saying, diversity is strength? Well, I certainly think that's reflected in in this year's list. I mean, as Mike just alluded to, you've got a lot of sectors covered off here. You might automatically assume out 40 under 40 list in Ottawa, we're going to have a lot of tech people. Well, there are quite a few. I mean, obviously Shopify alone has 2 people on the list, 2 of its senior executives. You've got other founders of companies that I really like Noibu, which is another e-commerce company that helps detect glitches. So you've got one of their founders in there. Neurovine, which is a really cool kind of health tech, biotech company that's doing real groundbreaking research into concussion treatments. That's pretty interesting. But then you've got people like Nick McRae, the president of Roxborough Bus Lines. You've got a senior executive from Chio on there. You've got the operations manager, PCL Construction. You've got all these different sectors. I mean, just about any aspect of the economy you want to talk about, it's there, which is, I think, bodes really well for Ottawa, showing that, we've got real good bench strength in tech, but we've also got it in a lot of other sectors as well. You can never be too diversified when it comes to economic growth. So I think that really speaks to a real promising future for many aspects of the local economy here.
Neat. Dave, thanks for this insight. I agree 100%. It's quite remarkable to see all the sectors reflected like that. And that's just due to strong nominations from all those sectors, by the way. We're going to stick with you, Dave, for story number 2. And the person at the center of this story, I think, will be familiar with most of the people watching or listening today. And that person is Rod Bryden. Rod's known way back when for companies like World Heart. He was the owner of the Ottawa Senators, and also a company called Plasco that had this concept of developing a demonstration plant in Ottawa to take trash and convert it to energy. We're not talking about Plasco. We're talking about a different company called Omni Technologies, and it closed a $35 million deal that could see its system and technology used in California. Dave, tell us a little bit more about this story.
Yeah, Mike. Well, absolutely. As you said, Rod Bryden really needs no introduction. I mean, he was the face of the Ottawa Senators for for quite a while. He's been involved in a ton of other businesses in town. He's 80 years young and still going strong. Says he's still up every morning, 5:30, doing calls till 1 in the morning. I mean, he has more energy than most people half his age, and now he's pouring it into Omni, which really it's the rebranded version of the former Plasco. When I talked to Rod back in the late last year, he said he just kind of wanted to put the history of Plasco behind him. We all know the background of that. They had a demonstration plant set up at the city of Ottawa. They ran into some financing trouble, filed for creditor protection. Now they're back and they feel like they're better than ever and really have perfected this energy or this technology rather that converts waste, trash, municipal garbage into energy. It uses a high temperature plasma gas that then allows allows for easier creation of green hydrogen and other potential real groundbreaking potential new energy sources for the future. And they've signed on their first customer, and that's the Larson and Lamb Climate Initiative. That's a nonprofit foundation led by pair of California philanthropists Chris Larson and Lina Lamb. Larson is a billionaire tech entrepreneur from Silicon Valley, whose one of his real missions he's looking for renewable energy sources. And he heard about Omni through Daniel Cameron, who's a renewable energy expert at the University of California, Berkeley. He connected with Rod Bryden. Next thing you know, he's signing a $35 million US deal to build one of Omni's plants at an as yet unnamed California location. So it will start converting garbage to energy they hope to have the plan up and running by the end of 2023. So Bryden's really hoping that this is kind of the first domino that falls and kind of starts the momentum growing to finally generate real revenue for this technology. It's been a long time coming. It's been this technology has been 15 years in the making, really. So we know that when it comes to green energy, it's very few companies are an overnight success. So Bryden really feels like finally the former Plasco, now Omni's time has come, and he's really hoping for big things in the future. So we'll follow it closely and see where it goes, Mike.
Yeah. It would be nice, as you indicated, the technology seems so innovative way back when. It was too bad the demonstration plant couldn't have been a bigger success. But yeah, good luck. And I think it's the right time for this type of idea, right? I mean, there's been no better time for this to happen. Listen, Peter and Dave, before we go to our last story of the day, I want to bring in our legal expert from Nelligan Law, our sponsor behind the headlines. Jim Anstey is an associate lawyer with the Employment Law Group. Welcome to Jim.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Jim, we're getting to the point in this pandemic where I'm being optimistic here that we might be, employers that is, might be willing to recall employees to the office. The assumption is those employees are working from home, of course. So if an employer is getting closer to that point where they're going to ask an employee, stop working from home, work in the office now, what legal or specifically employment law questions should they be considering?
Well, first and foremost, we're really I would say at the beginning of a transition period, perhaps, or getting closer to a transition period, like you referred to, where employees will start to come back to the office, certainly as the threat of COVID subsides. The thing, employers have to realize, and employees as well, is we're in an extraordinary situation. In the normal course of, employees would not be allowed to work from home unless unless they had an arrangement with their employer. But with COVID, we're all mandated to work from home. Once once the pandemic is over, or we get close to the end, and employees don't have to start working, don't have to work from home anymore, we're going to be in a situation where the pandemic threat has passed. And now we have employees in the in our workforce who are still working from home, perhaps. And the risk there is for employers is to make sure they don't let things remain the same, or don't express their their expectations for remote work and attending the office and all the things that go along with that. Not to delay that, because, if, 6 months or a year passes and employees are still working remotely as they were before, doing whatever they want, there's going to be an expectation that continues. And the risk there is that it becomes, a fundamental part of your employment agreement that the employer can't later change. So what I'm telling employers is, before we get to that transition period, or as we get into that transition period, make sure your employees understand your expectations in terms of remote work, when you have to come to the office. Remote work policies are a good idea now because we're all working remotely, and employers do have some issues here and there with how that's going. Overall, it's going well. But you do hear complaints about certain things, and that's best managed if the employees know the expectations. We've been developing some policies for employers along those lines to make that work and reduce that risk going forward. When remote work likely becomes a real part of work life.
I like that advice. So don't use this time and let it pass. Be proactive. Set your expectations, as you said, about if it is the case, an employer's intention to bring people back to the office, and start crafting. I think I heard what you say, a remote work policy now, so that employees have a little bit more context and know what's coming down the pipe.
Absolutely. You don't want to be in a situation where employees expect to be able to work from home whenever they want, because that's what's been happening now. And, when the pandemic is over, we're outside of this extraordinary legal situation, what the employer allows employees to do can affect, the employment contract. So we need to be careful there.
Thanks, Jim. Great advice. And that was Jim Anstey from Nelligan Law. Thanks for their support of this show. Listen, the third and final story is an interesting one for me. I'm a little bit of a history buff, at least I'm interested in it. This story comes from OBJ contributor Tom Van Dusen and is part of OBJ Regional, which is covering Eastern Ontario. The story is about an entrepreneur who is working to turn a 200-year-old former windmill tower on the shores of the St. Lawrence Seaway into a symbol of cutting-edge economic development. And the plan is to restore the building to regenerate the shoreline using a green design and construction technologies, and also create a hub for social and environmental reasons. And it's not just a lot of talk. In fact, $2 million has already been invested into this development. Peter, I'm going to go to you on this. The story is centered in a town of Maitland, a town I didn't know much about. I had to look it up on Google Maps. It's about 5 kilometers east of Brockville. But give us the details, Peter.
Well, what's particularly fascinating about this storyline is that it's the latest example of an investor from outside the region, from a major urban center in this case, that's making a very large investment into a tourism operation in Eastern Ontario, and if you talk to the economic development officials right across the region, they've really identified this. They've circled this as a major opportunity for communities in their catchment areas. So whether you're talking about wilderness or outdoor adventure tourism opportunities, in Renfrew County along the Ottawa River, or such as in this case, breathing new life, giving new ideas, new attractions in really historic communities. These communities really do see an opportunity to increase their tourism sector on the strength of these investments. So again, the story we're talking about today is centered in Maitland, but it was just a couple months ago that we had a story about 2 sisters, one from Vancouver, one from Montreal, who purchased a former church in the town of Iroquois with big plans to turn it into a new hospitality center. So, again, if you zoom back, on a very high level, you do see the opportunity in the sense that this entire region is within easy driving distance of the Greater Toronto area as well as Montreal, and of course more broadly in tourism, we know that there's this appetite for a new wave of attractions, right? Experiential tourism, something a little bit different than what's been traditionally on offer. So it is an exciting trend to watch, to see if it does sort of grow into a trend, both from an investor side as well as from an economic development side in a lot of these communities.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And tourism after the pandemic will be more important than ever. Even this summer, potentially. I know the project's not going to be done that time soon, but just to have kind of that rubber road, or whatever they call it, rubber tire market. Peter, we're going to start wrapping up. Let's go to you to give us a sense of a couple projects we're working on.
Yeah, so just briefly, two quick things. So really exciting this week, we're officially launching the start of our annual OAX survey process. So this is a project that's really focused in on the associations and not-for-profit space. So again, we know that here in our community, and as well right across the country, associations and not-for-profits play a vital role. They're a major industry upon themselves. And this is a project that we do every year with our partner Otis Group that really takes the pulse of the sector. So we're asking associations executives to participate in this survey. It's a great opportunity for them to benchmark their operations against their peers, but as well make their voice heard and share both the challenges as well as the opportunities that both their own organization as well as the industry as a large is facing. So if you are an association executive, we really encourage you to visit obj.ca, scroll down to the events tab. That's where we put a link to the survey, and definitely please do make your voice heard. And the other event I just wanted to highlight is that we have our latest in a series of webinars coming up this Wednesday. So, as you were just sort of alluding to in your conversation with Jim, fingers crossed. It feels like we're on the cusp of a mass vaccine rollout, which is, of course, spectacular news. But for employers, that really means that now is the time to start planning about what a return to work might look like for your organization. And we've done a lot of our own polling, our own surveys, and talked to a lot of experts. There's a lot of predictions out there that suggest that we're going to be looking at a hybrid workforce where some people are working in an office, some people are working from home, and that's really going to put a bit of pressure on employers to figure out how they're going to adapt that and make sure that they have all the tools and setups in place to encourage collaboration. So we have a webinar coming up this Wednesday with our partners Interactive Audio Visual. There's still time to register. Again, please go to obj.ca/events. You'll find the link and more information about that.
Well, thank you, Peter, for your all your insights, and to you too, Dave. We're going to start wrapping this up. It brings us to the end of this episode. A reminder that you can watch or listen to this podcast in a variety of ways. On YouTube, we ask that you like, subscribe, and click the bell so you get notifications about when we're posting videos. You can also listen to this podcast on platforms such as Spotify, Apple, SoundCloud, Twitch. Google's in there somewhere too. And of course, I encourage you to visit obj.ca website throughout the weekdays for regular updates. And again, one more recommendations: subscribe to OBJ Today, which is our weekday email newsletter. Once again, you can go to obj.ca and go to newsletter/sign up. And you can sign up. On behalf of my colleagues, Peter and David, that's it for this week's episode. Stay healthy. Hope to see you really soon. Bye-bye.